This is the inside of your child's math notebook. This is something that is allowed to come home nightly but needs to be returned to school daily. As you can see, we've already done several things in our math notebook. This is our table of contents, and we list the page and what's going on in our particular math journals as we do them. Here's first page. You'll notice my tape looks a little different than your child's. That's in me trying to show them how to tape into their notebooks. Vocabulary is listed in here. This is the one we're going to be having a test on soon, so you'll see that in there. Then there's some examples and some ways to do things in here, some foldable type things, some more vocabulary where we've started rounding today and yesterday. And today we took some notes on rounding. We were talking about rounding to the nearest 10 today, and these are the notes we took. I'm going to kind of walk through how we did this today so that you will understand it a little better at home. So what we did was, these are just the notes. They go over exactly what I'm about to tell you. We made a number line, which is one way to round. We picked the tens that come before and the 10 that comes after the number that we're rounding. Then we find that number on our number line and we decide where it is closer to. Is it closer to the higher 10 or the lower 10? Larger 10 or smaller 10? Once we've made that decision, that is the number that it should round to. We also learned today that the only exception to this particular way of rounding is when you round to 5 because it lands in the middle. You always round up to the higher number. Okay? Same thing works with 143. As you can see, our number line starts at 140, and the next 10 that should come near 143 is 150. So we can round down to 140 or up to 150. When we find 143 on the number line, we notice that it is closer to 140 than it is to 150. So 143 rounded to the nearest 10 would be 140. Next, we got some rounding rules for place value rounding. A note to ourselves was that the ones place will tell us what happens to the tens place when we round using place value. The first thing that we need to do is look at the rounding number and decide what 10 comes before and what 10 comes after. So when we're doing that with a particular number, looking at 42, we would decide what 10 comes before, which would be 40, and what 10 comes after, which would be 50. Then the next thing we're going to do is look at the ones place and decide if it's 5 or more or 4 or less. Depending on that will tell us whether we're going to round up or round down. When we look at 42, 2 is less than 5, so we would round down or to 40. So 42 rounded to the nearest 10 would be 40. We can do the same thing rounding a hundreds number. When we look at 177, the tens closest to that would be 170 and 180. When we look at the ones place, the 7 would be more than 5. So this number would round up to 180. So the answer to 177 rounded to the nearest 10 would be 180. Tonight's homework will be completely involved in that. They will need their math journals to answer tonight's homework. Everything is about rounding to the nearest 10 and finding numbers that round to the nearest 10. If you have questions, please feel free to email me, and I'll be glad to try to help you as best I can. I do not usually answer emails after about 6 o'clock so that I can spend some time with my family as well. Thank you and have a good evening.